Hello, my friend, and welcome to Pothosound. My name is Andrew, and I have been dying to launch this YouTube channel for quite some time. I've really wanted a solid home for all of the things that I'm doing with virtual instrument development, and this is, I think, a great place to share some of the work that I've been doing and will be working on going forward. Now, I've been developing in Kontakt specifically for about a year now. There was a video I saw on the David Hilowitz music YouTube channel, and I'll link this video in the description below. But there was a video where he took us through how to build an instrument in Kontakt from start to finish, and that really piqued my interest, and I wound up developing my core skill set with a series of tutorial videos by David Healey on his website Extant Audio. So I bought some of his tutorial lessons, really studied hard and practiced and all of that stuff, and I've come quite a ways with my skill set doing VI development. Again, specifically in Kontakt. I have plans to get into some other development environments, but for now, Kontakt has been my home. And while virtual instrument development it is a multidisciplinary, activity, right, where it involves sound design, graphic design, a little bit of entry level, at least with what I'm doing, like basic scripting or program coding, and it involves a lot of patience as well, So I plan to do videos on at least those first three things in the future. But to kickstart the channel, I thought I would take you all through a tour of the various instruments that I've built in Kontakt over the last year or so. And the first one that I built, the idea was to create a marching snare drum instrument, kind of like the stuff from Virtual Drumline. And this was the very first thing I ever put together that had, a quote user interface with a little menu with a few different stick options here and some knobs that never did anything. And I think a little bit after that, the day after, I figured out how to import a graphic into the background and all of that. So this never really went anywhere, but that was my very first time in Kontakt, going behind the scenes into the script editor and doing all of this stuff, typing all this text in the actual script editor in Kontakt. So real basic stuff, but that was my first sort of dip into the pool, so to speak. The next thing that I did was actually this thing called Ultimate Dubstep Drummer, and this was used or created with a sound library that I had just on the hard drive. It had some kicks and claps and snares, and this is where I actually learned how to give functionality to knobs, and I actually managed to get the level meters working properly, and I had an idea for some waveforms down here, but I never really went anywhere with it. This would actually be a good one to try and do something with now that I know what I'm doing. But again, it was just my first step into giving functionality to the on-screen controls. The next big one that I remember doing was modern battery tenors. Just like with the marching snare drum instrument, I had an idea for a tenor drum instrument, and I think this was the first build where I was trying to figure out where to put controls, but I did put together a version that had actual graphics, and I remember trying to figure out how to get the graphics to change, and I imported some custom knobs from Knobman and some custom graphics that I created in Canva. So to start with, I was using canva.com to get some basic graphics going, but that wasn't enough. I wanted to take it a little bit further, so Modern Battery Tenors version 2.0 came around. And this actually had a menu with selectable size configurations for the different drums, and the knobs looked a little bit better. And I actually had a tabbed interface here, which again, shout out to Dave Healey for the videos on how to do that stuff. And this was all still pretty basic. I'm pretty sure that I was using Sublime Text in a basic form at this point, but it was a step forward for me, for sure. I was pretty pleased with how that came together, even though, again, I didn't really end up taking it anywhere. It was just more me still figuring out how to do stuff behind the scenes in Kontakt. Now, where things really got interesting for me was the build of an instrument from a sound library that is by a company called Soundmorph. So if you've not heard of Soundmorph, they are a really good sound design firm, and they have a particular library called Cinematic. And so I imported all of the samples into Kontakt and set off on my first real ambitious build, which was a multi-tabbed interface with a bunch of controls, with key switches for all of the different categories of sounds that come in that library. I use the Dave Healey tutorial lessons. He has a lesson on how to do waveform stuff and how to do the sample offset and everything. So this was a major step forward for me, but I ran into a problem because my scripting skills were still pretty rudimentary at this point, where Kontakt ran out of memory space. So basically my script was too long trying to do this, and I wasn't able to finish it because Kontakt just couldn't do it. So I stepped away for a little while. I redesigned the instrument from the ground up and came up with Cinematic V2. Now, I should also note that at this point I invested in Photoshop, and the graphic design elements were a lot easier to handle at this point. Photoshop made things so much easier. Canva was great for a while, but I decided, you know what? I really want to dig into this. I'm going to invest some money into it. I'm going to get Photoshop so I can make it look a little better. And this one definitely looks a lot better than that first version. And I added some things like the little cassette reel things here and the logo move, and you can actually activate a reverse function. I've also got more samples in this one, and with the key switches I made it so that the last played note is actually highlighted so you can work with it. The effects section on this was also a lot more in-depth, where I made this so that the user can insert any of these effects into any effect slot. And it worked well enough. Again, for where I was at the time, this was pretty major. I remember spending a lot of time on this stuff here and getting all of the hiding and showing and all of that type of stuff to work properly. And it never, I don't think I ever got all of the bugs out of it. It worked well enough, but it was just a great learning curve for me to figure out how to do this stuff in Kontakt. And I had plans for a modulation page, but I ended up having to focus on other stuff at the time. So this project has been sidelined for quite a while now. And the most recent thing, the big thing that I've been working on and am pretty close to finishing up, is a synthesizer that I called Vanilla Waves. And the premise behind this one is it came from me wanting to learn how to use an XY pad in Kontakt. And so I thought it would be cool to have a synth where you can blend between the 4 basic waveforms with an XY pad. And this one has a bunch of tabbed interfaces, kind of like the cinematic instruments, but each of these waveforms has their own dedicated filter. I've got ADSR links on each of these so that the controls here can be linked together so it can be treated as one big synth. But I've got an A and a B that can be paired in any which way. Oops, that's the filter link. Here we go. So yeah, I've got the ADSRs linked up. These are buttons to turn the waveforms on or off. There are dedicated effects chains for each of the waveforms with a separate global effect chain. I modified the factory arpeggiator script that comes with Kontakt to work with this particular instrument and made it look cool. And there's also two dedicated LFOs for each of the waveforms as well. So this is a major step up from where I was a year ago. I mean, this I've been working on for several months now, but granted, I had to step away for a while to actually run my main business, Microphonic Designs. My busy season just ended. But yeah, this is where I'm at, and most recently, even more so than Vanilla Waves, is a project I'm calling Menu Synth, which is not really an instrument that's designed to like sound super cool or anything, but the main thing here is that I am figuring out how to implement a scrolling menu system to recall presets within the instrument itself instead of just recalling snapshots. So that's what this menu synth is, and I'll probably do, I think I'm planning on doing a tutorial series on building this once I get it finished, because I figure that might be a good way to add some valuable content to the channel here and give back to the community, because I have scrounged and scoured the forums so many times for information, and even just setting up the applications to get started with building this stuff is a bit convoluted in and of itself. So I figure I'll probably do some of that stuff later on, but for now, I just wanted to share some of the things that I've been up to. It's not many instruments, but the thing to know is that something like this synthesizer here, to get it working, it takes a lot of effort with the behind-the-scenes stuff. Particularly, I can't remember I don't know why I put a password on the script, but the script for Vanilla Waves is quite complex. Getting all the graphics in order and all that stuff, like this is all completely 100% from me, and I'm very proud of it. And I hope that you dig it. I may try to get this particular NKI instrument uploaded somewhere for download at some point. But for now, again, I'm just kind of showcasing where I'm at with all this, and I'm excited to invite you along the journey with me. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe for more of this type of content where we're getting in here, building virtual instruments, doing some sound design, doing some basic graphic design, all that type of stuff, linking it all together. I'm excited to really get this going. So until next time, my friend, I'll see you there.